Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. Today we're going to make a cake, kind of a brown butter pecan cake. I don't have all my mise en place out yet, just yet. I wanted to brown the butter and then stick it in the fridge to sort of chill it and firm it up a little bit before we move on. So once I get the butter browned and in the fridge, I'll go and do my mise en place. So in this pot, butter, I'm going to put it on sort of a medium heat, get it melted, and then just to the point where it starts to brown. Now, this is one of those operations that is super simple, but you do have to watch your pot. Technically, not a difficult operation. Really what you need to do is just have your senses and your wits about you and watch it. So the butter's going to completely melt. It's going to become liquid. It's going to start to bubble and boil. That is all of the water in the butter boiling off and evaporating. It's going to be really noisy. Then it's going to get quiet. And at the point where it gets quiet, that's where I want to pull it off. At the point where it gets quiet, that means that all of the water has been driven off. It's not boiling anymore. What you've got left are milk solids and oil. The milk solids are going to start to brown at that point as well. You're going to get a nutty flavor in your nose. And I want to pull it off at that point. Because you can take it very quickly from brown to burnt. You don't want that to happen. And depending on how heavy your pot is going to retain heat and it's going to continue cooking. So I get it to the point that I like it, take it off the heat and get it immediately into a cold bowl, or not cold, room temperature bowl, so that the cooking stops and it starts to cool down. It's really simple. You do this once, you do this twice, you'll know how to do it perfectly every time. So you can see we're starting to get some foaming here. The butter has gone foamy and it's starting to boil. We're going to get that noise coming off. I've got the stovetop set to 6 out of 9. And I can hear the snap, crackle, pop of the water boiling off. Watching it pretty closely. Just get a look at these snazzy new aprons we've got from Search and Rescue Denim. Links down below to buy one for yourself. I do get a cut of the sales, and that cut of the sales is helping me keep the lights on here in the studio. So it is pretty bubbly, pretty noisy. I don't smell any nuttiness yet, and I'm not seeing any sort of color change. Still a little ways to go, but don't walk away. This happens pretty quickly. Okay, here we go. The sound is changing. The sound is changing. Starting to smell a little bit of the nutty flavor. Still got a little bit of bubbling going on here. And I can just barely tell that the color is changing. We're really close. Okay, color's changing. It might not be picked up on the camera because there's still quite a bit of foam in here. But it's gone completely silent. And it's getting a brownish red. Can you see that color change? Off we go. And I'm going to pour that directly into the mixing bowl we're using to make the cake. And into the fridge. Okay, here we go. It's cooled down a bit. It hasn't solidified. As you can see, it's, still pretty liquidy. I've just run out of time. Sometimes I would do this step the night before and just leave it in the fridge overnight, but getting it hard is not that big of a deal. So into the butter, I've got brown sugar and regular old white sugar. And we're going to mix that together. While that mixes together, I've got some flour. To that, I'm adding salt and baking powder. And we'll just give that, just a little bit of a stir. You don't have to go crazy. Okay, this is looking good. Now, 3 eggs, one at a time. You let the egg mix in, and then you mix in the next one. You get better emulsification, you get a better mixture if you do it one at a time. And it doesn't take that much longer. Second egg. Final egg. And a little bit of egg on the counter. 1 cup measuring cup and some buttermilk. Now, if you don't have buttermilk in your house and you don't want to buy a whole liter of buttermilk just to make this cake, maybe you've got plain yogurt in your fridge, maybe you've got some sour cream in your fridge. Okay, I'm going to put in the vanilla now. We'll mix that in. That's looking really good. Smells fantastic as well. Back to the buttermilk. So you don't have buttermilk, you don't want to buy buttermilk. Maybe you've got sour cream or yogurt in your fridge. 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup of sour cream or yogurt, obviously plain yogurt, and then mix it in with regular milk, give it a little bit of stir, and use that. Please, please, I get it. Your grandmother, your mother, your great-grandmother has always told you that you can make buttermilk by putting vinegar in milk and waiting for it to thicken. What you've made is acidulated milk. Yes, you've brought the acid component that in a lot of cakes or baking is needed in order to activate the baking soda. But there's so much more going on with real buttermilk. You're not going to get all of the flavors that buttermilk is bringing. Buttermilk is a fermented product, and it brings huge amounts of flavor beyond just that single note of vinegar that you've added. In a pinch, the vinegar will do. It will accomplish what's needed, but you don't have to wait for it to thicken. You can just put the milk in and then the vinegar. That's fine. But if you really want the flavor, the true flavor that you're going to get from this fermented product, mix up one of those other 2 fermented dairy products with some regular milk. So much better. So much better. And if you live somewhere where you can get kefir, just fully 100% substitute kefir. Works a treat. In fact, I'd almost say it's better. Okay, now we just alternate back and forth. A little bit of flour, a little bit of buttermilk. A little bit of flour. It's mostly mixed in. A little bit of buttermilk. And just go back and forth until it's all used up. Okay, the batter is all mixed up. Last addition, pecans, because, you know, pecans, why not? We'll just mix those in. Now, in this episode, down in the comments section, bonus points for anyone who can tell me, I mean, I know what it says, but anyone who can say down in the comments section, what does my hat say? Little piece of Canadiana for you. If you were following along the first part of our vacation, there's a clue in one of my Instagram posts. So we're going to break this between 2 cake pans. I have buttered and put a parchment disc in the bottom. Oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and we'll just divide this between the 2 pans as evenly as you can get. Don't lose any sleep over it. Okay. Smooth this out. Just to get any air bubbles out. And into the oven. Okay. If you're a Canadian of a certain age, it tastes just like Wacka-Packa Macintosh. So good. Now, if you've been around here for a while, you know that Julie and I aren't huge fans of massive amounts of frosting on top of a cake. So what I'm going to make is roughly only half of the frosting that normal people would put on a cake. I will put the full amount, the full recipe amounts in the recipe box below, the description box below, but I'm only going to make half. We're going to carry on with the brown butter theme. So into the pot goes the butter. I'll bring the temperature up to 6, maybe 7. While that's heating up, we'll measure out the whipping cream. This is 35% cream. And I need about 3/4 of a cup. You've got a whole pile of flavoring options for this. I'm going to stick to just the brown butter, I think. You could add some maple syrup to this. Definitely add some maple syrup, a little bit of corn syrup, cane syrup. And when I say a little bit, I mean like maybe 2 tablespoons. That'll just sort of deepen the flavor that you've got going on with the brown butter and the brown sugar. Sorghum. Sorghum would really ramp up the sort of deep earthy flavors. Again, tablespoon, maybe 2 tablespoons. A little bit of whiskey or rum, I think would go really well in this too. It just sort of adds a little bit of a, take you off the edge a little bit, and you'd wonder, what is that? Just enough to kind of change the flavor. I don't think you'd have to put too much in. Okay, so the butter is browning. Can you hear it? Just like before, I'm waiting for that sound to go away. Except this time, I'm not going to take it off. I'm not going to take it off the heat. We're going to add the cream, the brown sugar, and salt in. Okay, there we go. Browned butter, looking really good. So, in goes the cream, salt, brown sugar, and I'll bring this back to a boil. Continue to stir it, dissolve the sugar, and boil it for maybe 3 minutes. Sorghum. Let's throw some sorghum in. I have all of these ideas, and sometimes it's really hard to follow through on all of them. But I'm going to put in, let's call it 2 tablespoons of sorghum. There we go. Love that flavor. So, molasses would work, sorghum would work, golden corn syrup would work, golden syrup, golden cane syrup would work, maple syrup would work, or none of them. The beauty thing about this kind of preparation is we're going to be putting in powdered sugar or icing sugar. And so the difference in a little bit of liquid here isn't going to make that much of a change, because we're not all going to boil it down to the same point. And you can make up with it with this type of preparation, with the icing sugar. You know what? It's Friday. It's Friday. Let's glug in just a little bit of rye. Rye, rum, brandy, any of the dark brown spirits I think would work. Or just leave it out. It's not a big deal. Okay, I'm going to call that done. Got the mixing bowl here for the stand mixer. In this goes. Careful. Be so incredibly careful with this. It is hot. It is boiling. It is filled with sugar. If you spill it on yourself, it's gonna stick and it is gonna burn something horrible. Don't be afraid of it, but certainly respect it. Okay, paddle attachment. This goes on, and I'm gonna mix this at about that speed for probably 10, maybe 15 minutes while I clean up. Okay, so it's been mixing for about 15 minutes. It's cooled down considerably, and the consistency has changed. I don't even know how to describe it. What does that look like to you? Anyway, so I'm going to turn it down, and I'm going to start adding in the icing sugar. And a little bit of vanilla. And then a little more icing sugar. Anytime I make icing or frosting, I look at the icing sugar component as like a bare suggestion. Icing sugar is one of those things that varies a lot between brands, how fine it's ground, and between countries. I've found that they're completely different in certain places, and there's 10x and 8x, and X is used as a signifier of how fine they're ground. A lot of the ones that we find in the supermarkets here don't have that X designation. They're just called icing sugar. And so how fine it is going to change how much you need, how humid it is on the day, how much you boiled it over here, did you measure everything correctly? So I started out with 1 3/4 cups of icing sugar, and I think I probably need maybe just a little bit more, but not much. The consistency's looking pretty good at this point. I'm going to say that consistency's pretty good, so I've got some butter here, and we're going to mix that in. And once that's fully incorporated, I can ice the cakes.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, Jules.
Hey, friends.
Get a fork.
It's iced. It's a special day. What's the occasion?
It's Friday.
That works for me, my
It's
friend.
Friday.
That works for me.
Okay. So.
Maple?
No.
No, just happens to be brownish.
Well, yeah. So
That's a little concerning.
I saw a cake recipe in a magazine, one that bids you good eating, and
Brown sugar?
I thought, I really want to make that cake. And then I looked at it and I thought, you know what, I'm going to make some changes.
Really? You made it your own?
So they had brown butter icing. And I thought, I'm going to brown the butter in the cake. So I browned the butter in the cake. And then I thought, oh, if I'm browning the butter in the cake, I'm not going to use all white sugar. I'm going to substitute some brown sugar. And so I did that.
Yeah. It's a very caramely flavor because of that. Both the cake and the icing, because I ate the icing first.
That's really good. I like that. So.
Trying to eat it gracefully. Just small bites.
No. Oh. The icing together is great, isn't it? Okay, so there's a tiny little bit of rye in the icing. Maybe a tablespoon.
What made you decide that?
I thought it would go.
It seems to.
Yeah. And it's very subtle. Chicken.
Chicken likes it too.
No, I don't think chicken likes it. I'm not sharing.
You're not sharing.
I'm not sharing with chicken.
Okay.
So, great cake. I did put the icing in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes before I put it on the cake. It is a hot day, and it is a day where it needed to be refrigerated a little bit. Winner. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.